to finish the set of videos I want you to look at before doing homework 6, I thought I would do a review of the lecture number 17, which was the last day before the second exam. Again, this material I couldn't put on the exam because I didn't give you a chance to demonstrate your knowledge of it, and I also didn't give you a good chance to review it. In this particular lecture, this introduces again the sale of real estate transactions in Sacramento. And using that, the question is, well, how do I process all that data? Now, if you've done Excel, you know, hopefully, how to pull up a whole bunch of data in Excel and use its nifty tools to do histograms and do pivot tables, all kind of really useful things. You've already seen the extract all records function. Given a file, this will go through and create a list of lists or a list of records for all the information stored in a CSV file. We're going to use that now to create a histogram. Now, as you can imagine, what a histogram looks like is a collection of values where you want to know how many homes sold with 0 bedrooms, how many sold with 1 bedroom, 2, 3, 4, 5, and more. So to do that, you can imagine doing that yourself by just keeping a little tally sheet of your own and going one by one through all of the real estate transactions. And every time you see a house that had 3 bedrooms, you increase the count for 3. Every time you see a house that has 4 bedrooms, you increase the count for 4. So once you understand that process, the question is, well, how do you translate that into code? And that's what this function here is. This is the histogram function. I'll move into the Python code so you can see it here in a better editor form. I'm going to use a dictionary to keep track of things because I don't know in advance how many bedrooms there are. So I just want to keep track of all of my bedrooms that I might have. I'll start by preparing a count that says, look, I'm going to keep track of all the bedrooms from 0 up until, well, not including 7, 0 up until 6. And I'm going to assign for each of those counts a value. And then I'm going to go for every row in my sale of transactions. Remembering we skipped the first one because that's the header. Index now is going to be a variable that reflects the rows one at a time. I get the particular sale of that location. And then if you look at the CSV file, you'll notice that they keep track of the street, city, zip code, state, and the number of beds. And this beds here is the 0th, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th index position. So in my histogram file, I say, get me the number of beds, which is this 4th entry, convert it to an int, and if that's smaller than or equal to 7, I have a winner. And I want to increment that count. Technically, you see there's actually a defect here because this is going to be my range up until 7, which means up to 6 bedrooms. So I better make this less than 7. Otherwise, I might find myself in a situation where I've got a defect. As it turns out, there were no homes sold in Sacramento with 6 bedrooms, so we were all set. Now, the way that this for loop works is it gets each real estate transaction one at a time, finds the number of beds, and then updates the account accordingly. Counts, bracket, number of beds, bracket. You should interpret as the current count of how many houses sold with that number of beds. And you've seen the plus equal operator before. This is an increment of 1 for each of those counts. So I go through all my sale of transactions, incrementing 1 at a time every time I see one. And when I'm done, I have a body of knowledge that I can now use to create a histogram off of that 1 at a time. So this code is actually more complicated than it needs to be, and I was kind of using this as an example to show you how to use dictionaries. I could have done this all entirely with an array, and I might as well do that right now just to show you how this all looks. Well, what I need to do is reflect on what my histogram really is. A histogram is going to keep track of all of my values, and I'm going to say I've got 0 bedrooms, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That keeps track of preparing a list, not a dictionary this time, but now a list with 0 counts for sales up to 6 bedrooms. This now gets simplified. And for each one of these, I know my number of beds is a number between 0 and 6, so I can do this, and then return my histogram. It's essentially the same function, it's just simpler, and sometimes that's the way that it works. We sometimes write code and it works, and then we look at it again with a critical eye and we realize, oh, I can make it even simpler. So now, let's review. I create a list of values to keep track of how many bedrooms have 0, how many houses sold with 0 bedrooms, how many houses sold with 1 bedroom, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. For each of my sales, I get them one at a time, find the number of beds, and increment the count for that. And then when I'm done, return the histogram. So if I do this on my small example, where I extract all the sales records using that function you've seen before, compute my histogram, and now my histogram has these numbers. 108 houses sold with 0 bedrooms. Okay, clearly that's just a mistake. This is what happens when data is partial. They just didn't record the number of bedrooms there. But here, 10 houses sold with just 1 bedroom, 133, 413 was the largest entry, and so on. To actually draw this, I mentioned before that you can use Pylab. If you happen to have Pylab, that's great. If you don't, well, don't worry about it. And Pylab has this function to quickly produce a bar chart. And so my bar chart will look like this. Nice and effective documentation to show that it looks like the largest number of homes sold in Sacramento indeed had 3 bedrooms. This is the basis for doing the kind of analysis over data that I've introduced in these videos, is to get you comfortable with the idea that you use CSV files to store data that you can load up into memory as lists of lists. Once you have those lists of lists, then you can do processing over them, and here I'm just going to extract out all the bedroom columns and use that to generate a histogram. In my next video, I'll show you how to take this and create what's called a pivot table, something you might have seen in Excel. We will leave that video for day 19. This completes the set of videos for day 18.